Hey everybody, we're here at Red Rocks Racing Sportsbook. He's Jason, I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast Bookends, powered by STN Sports. And, it's hot outside. We've talked about it. There's a lot of cool things going on in the world of sports right now. If it's tennis or soccer, baseball, getting ready for the Olympics. But let's really start with the All-Star break. All-Star break is coming up, and I think you look at baseball right now, Jay, and for me, there's some teams that are really ascending, and there's some teams that, I think they definitely have to be sellers. But let's talk about the teams kind of at the top right now. Phillies in the National League, Guardians in the American League. Phillies have 7 players in the All-Star game. Guardians have 5. Maybe a little bit of surprise with the Guardians. But that Philly team, just with that lineup, even with Harper and Schwartz hurt right now, still 5-5 in their last 10 games. Still playing really well. Best home record in baseball. Playing really, really good ball right now, and they've got a lot of guys going to the All-Star
Yeah, and those
game.
guys just made their comebacks. They saw the field yesterday. Schwarber and Harper back on the field, so they get them back before All-Star break. And it's not just the hitting for them and the representation from the bats, but it's also the guys in the bullpen that you don't expect in getting Strahm and Hoffman from that bullpen to be invited
Strahm's
to the
been
All-Star
great,
game.
yeah.
Combination with Wheeler and Suarez and Nola, obviously their starting 3 pitchers are absolutely outstanding. So there's no mistake as to why they're at the top, and expect them to continue to make that big run as we go into the second half of the season. It's kind of the same thing on the Guardians side. Obviously the offense has been absolutely exceptional. We've talked about it at length about their starting pitchers don't kind of blow
That's
you
the
away.
difference. They don't have the big 3.
Yeah,
right.
It's all bullpen and then the absolute bats that have been absolutely fantastic. And you talked about the difference between the top of the league and the bottom of the league, and there's a lot of teams in the middle. There's a lot of teams still fighting for those final wild card positions, which are going to make these next days before the All-Star break and the first kind of week and a half coming out of the All-Star break, who's going to be buyers and sellers. But on the other side of things, the bettors have been doing really, really well in baseball in betting against these kind of bad teams in the Marlins, the Rockies, the White Sox, and being able to bet on the good teams that have been winning games. And the Yankees have hit a little bit of a lull here, picking on them. So it's been good on the betting side of the counter. A lot of tickets being cashed in baseball. We're going to hit a big run here where baseball's kind of the only thing going on. So not good from the sportsbook standpoint. Very, very good from the bettor side of things, as we're desperate and waiting for football season to get here because the baseball tickets just continue to get cashed on a daily basis.
Well, I want to go back to the Guardians a little bit and touch on them. And you talked about the Phillies with the big 3, and the Guardians don't have that. So you really wonder how active they'll be at the deadline. But on the flip side, they're one of only 5 teams in the American League that has a winning record both at home and on the road. So they're very consistent, and the back end of that bullpen is really, really strong, of course, with Clase and the setup guys. So kind of curious to see what ultimately happens with them. But, we've talked about kind of these really good teams right now and the teams that have sent a lot of guys to the All-Star break. How about some of these young kids that, when you talk about if it's Paul Skeens, if it's there's a couple of guys I wrote down here that we talked about. Skeens, Jackson Merrill, Imanaga, Mason Miller, who have really kind of changed the complexion of their teams. It's kind of fun to have this influx of young talent in baseball right now.
Yeah, it's outstanding. And Paul Skeens, obviously the headliner, making his first All-Star game. We'll see if he actually ends up getting a start in the game, which has been talked about. He's made 10 starts. I believe he's 5-0, got like a 2.12 ERA, 78 strikeouts,
Crazy.
I think, in 59 innings. He's been exceptional.
The fact that he only has 59 innings and he's going to be in the All-Star game, that's crazy.
Oh, he's turned heads. He was a number 1 pick. It's great for the game. He's kind of leapfrogged
and he's
himself
not done yet.
He's leapfrogged himself to the kind of the favorite in that American or National League Rookie of the Year. Jackson Merrill, also at the top of that list, has been absolutely fantastic for the San Diego Padres. Really had an incredible month of June. I think he's up to 12 home runs, 46 RBI, somewhere batting around 280. You talked about Shada Imanaga. He's, again, 16 starts.
It's hard to believe he's the only Cub, though, that's in the All-Star game.
He's awesome. He's made 16 starts, 7-2, and that's kind of with a little bit of a slump that he had in there. 91 innings, 92 Ks, so kind of outperforming Skeens in the number of starts that he had, but again, Skeens just absolutely making that mark and looking out absolutely outstanding.
And the last guy on that list, though, Mason Miller, we know how good he is in the back end for the A's. Doesn't get a lot of opportunities to save games, continually hits over 100 miles an hour, and he's been one of the guys that's been rumored to potentially get traded. but you're going to have to give up a lot for him because not only is he under control this year, but 2 more seasons. So if it's a team that really needs to get somebody on the back end, I know we've kind of talked about the Orioles. They have enough young kids to really go get anybody they want. And I think talking about the Phillies with those big 3 they have, do the Orioles go out and get another starting pitcher? Is it the back end? Because, Kimbrel hasn't been great. What do the Yankees ultimately do? But the A's are in a great spot with Mason Miller right now if they decide to deal him.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, the trade deadline, we could have a whole segment or whole day talking about the trade deadline and where these guys are going to go. And before we get off the rookies, though, on the American League side of things, Luis Gil, the starting pitcher for the Yankees, started off the year really, really good. He's kind of had a couple bad starts here, 3-4 bad starts in a row, kind of rebounded with a good start against Boston on Sunday Night Baseball, pitched deep, I think, into the 7th inning, gave up 1 homer to Devers, and then Boston kind of opened it up, not on him, on the relievers, but Gil's been really good. And then kind of late, and I think he's the favorite to win the American League Rookie of the Year as we sit here today, is Wyatt Langford, who's moved up to batting 4th in that Texas Ranger lineup. Not a big home run hitter. I think he's got about 5 home runs, but batting close to that 280 and really putting games together. He hit for a cycle last week. I think he had another 4-hit game this week. So, again, Wyatt Langford, another big name coming up
for a Texas
in the
team that's not even a playoff team right now.
We'll hit my Texas Rangers, I think, in our segment here where we talk about teams that we think are going to have an exceptional second half or teams to look out for. As that's one of my sleeper teams here.
So before we leave kind of talking about the All-Star break a little bit, let's talk about what I think is actually probably the most exciting part about the All-Star break. We know a lot of times in the All-Star game, it's really dominated by pitching because you're only going in there for an inning, maybe an inning and a half, inning or 2, and they are playing in Arlington in Texas where home runs can jump out of that ballpark, but usually the pitchers have the advantage. But for the hitter side of it, it's the home run hitting contest, which I love watching on that Monday before the All-Star break. And you've got Pete Alonso, a 2-time winner in it, Alec Baum, Gunnar Henderson, Bobby Witt, Asuna's in it, Ramirez. There's some big name guys in it. Now, no Judge or Ohtani this year. Ohtani wanted to do it, but because of the injury and coming back, he decided that he wasn't going to do it. But I kind of love that influx of young guys who are in it for the first time right now against the Panda in Texas, where we know balls can jump out of. And look for props and different things that we have on the board with that as well.
Yeah, I know we're going to open up a bunch of stuff on the home run derby, and I think Pete Alonso. There's been a lot of talk about Christian Walker being snubbed from the All-Star selection, and when you compare his stats,
you can make a case for Michael Busch too being snubbed.
You talk about Alonso's stats to Christian Walker's stats, and Walker's really dominated him in every category. Right. So Alonso really needs to have an awesome performance here in the home run derby to kind of solidify as to what he's doing there. And again, he loves the home run derby, and I know the format changed. With the 3 minutes and the 40 pitches,
right.
Maybe that favors him, but I think it's going to come down to whoever can pitch the best. But I'm excited mostly to see. We've had this conversation in our hub all the time of the young shortstops. Right. And between Ellie De La Cruz and Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt, if you were starting a major league team, who would you take right now? And despite Ellie De La Cruz's stolen base prowess, it always comes down to Gunnar Henderson and Bobby Witt, and it's a pretty split team back there as to who they would take between those guys. Obviously, Gunnar Henderson playing on the exceptional Orioles, maybe getting a little bit more press, and Bobby Witt stays unknown, but 2 exceptional players, 2 guys that I'm really looking forward to see.
Same.
And again, their game is not a pure power of the home run derby. Henderson,
but it's
I think,
fun to have these
27
guys in
homers.
Right.
Witt somewhere in 25. But again, the speed at which these guys play with, the high batting average, the stolen bases, 2 absolutely exceptional players from an all-around game standpoint. But I'm excited to see Henderson and Witt take on the home run derby.
As you touched on, too, the format is a little bit different this year. In the first round and the semifinals, each hitter will get either 3 minutes or 40 pitches, depending on which one of those benchmarks gets reached first. In the final round, a hitter will get 2 minutes or 27 pitches. That doesn't include the bonus period. Previous format, hitters faced a time limit, but there wasn't any restriction on the number of pitches. And you kind of touched on it a little bit. It's really critical now is who's going to be pitching to these guys, that they have some comfort level, and maybe they've actually practiced with these guys before. Because you've seen in the past that a batter will actually take a number of pitches. You can't really take anything right now because that counts against you. So the new format, I think, is going to be really interesting, especially in a stadium like Arlington where the ball jumps out of.
Yeah, the strategy is there, and I think we've seen over the years guys that have pitching coaches, or you see the kind of cool stuff of, I know Alec Baum's going back to a high school pitching coach or something like that he won a home run derby with all the time. So there's also some awesome storylines involving these pitching coaches. So something to look out for there as well in handicapping your home run derby.
All right, so we've kind of talked about the All-Star break, the home run derby, the two hot teams, the Phillies and Guardians right now. But as we get kind of to that midway point, we want to talk about a couple of teams that we both, without chatting about it first, kind of wrote down that we think is going to be a surprise team maybe, or is going to make that run. For me in the American League, I think we've already seen it. Maybe it's not that much of a surprise. It's the Astros. If they could just get healthy, I think that they're really a dangerous team in the American League West. But the key for me is they're going to be active at the trade deadline. There's so many guys that they appear to be in on right now. And Seattle, although they've been rumored to be in on Horner and a few other guys, they just can't hit. I mean, they strike out. They lead the league in strikeouts. They've got some young talent at pitching. But I think the Astros will surpass them. And for my National League team, it's the Cubs.
Well, before you jump to, so let's stay in the American League. And I just you and I all too often think alike.
Right.
And Seattle currently leading the AL West at 50-43. Astros 47-44, 3 games behind them, and then the Rangers at 44-48. You target the Astros, and part of the reason why you're targeting the Astros is that you don't have no faith in Seattle.
Correct. Right.
Obviously,
especially they're hitting now.
Their pitching staff and Castillo and Kirby and Gilbert, they do have a great pitching staff. They do have a good back end of that pitching staff, and Munoz, Stanik's been good. And the Astros going to get Kyle Tucker back.
Right after the All-Star break, he's supposed to be back.
Their pitching hasn't been awesome. Maybe Verlander can come back and be good. Maybe McCullers can come back here a little bit, maybe more in August. Valdez has not been good. He needs to find something. Luis Garcia is potentially supposed to be back, but they've been doing it kind of without a pitching staff and piecemealing it.
But the Mariners have let them back in.
Yeah, the Mariners had over a 10-game lead. Right. Now you're talking about a 2.5-game lead. You talked about it. They just can't hit. They do have an incredible lineup. Julio Rodriguez is really underperformed.
He's hurt, though, too, now.
And so we'll see if the Mariners can find their way. They do have the pitching staff to do it. And you targeted the Astros, and I'm going to go a step further and go a team that's 5.5 back and go after the World Series champions and look at the Texas Rangers. Right. Again, a team that's underperformed. Aroldis Garcia hasn't been the guy. Simeon hasn't been the guy. Josh Young has been out of the lineup. Josh Smith's been there. I talked about Wyatt Langford. The only guy that's really hitting in this lineup is Seager, and he had missed some games. Nate Lowe has underperformed. I think that the Rangers are going to find a way to start hitting. They just got Max Scherzer back. I think that they can pitch themselves back into this thing. Look for me for the Texas Rangers. I think that they've got a little bit of a schedule that favors
Carter,
them as well.
Who was so Evan good Carter. Last year as a young kid, has been hurt now and been on the DL for the last 2 months.
But Josh Young is going to be back here. I think that his wrist is healing. He'll be back here shortly after All-Star break. I think that the Rangers lineup, from a pure hitting standpoint, they've got a chance to go make a move on both Seattle and Houston here.
I think that's what really makes the trade deadline so interesting this year, is that what teams are going to be sellers and what teams are going to be buyers. And we know some teams are ready. We know that the Yankees, the Phillies, the Astros, they're going to do what it takes to get better. Some of these teams that are kind of fringe teams right now, or young teams, what are they willing to do? And that's where, for the National League, to me, it's the Cubs. Because I think the Cubs want to be buyers, but their record may tell them that they have to be sellers. I think when you came into this season, signing Neris, Bellinger got a new contract, they picking up Bush, I think that the expectation level was that they were going to be much better than they are. They were top 5 in the league hitting last year with 2 outs. They're 27th in the league this year. Justin Steele just came off his first complete game. You look at Italian, who's pitched really well of late. But the next week, before the All-Star break, to me, is going to decide if the Cubs are buyers or sellers. They play the Orioles 2 more times, but they're going to have Eminaga and Steele going. Then they play 4 games over the weekend, including a doubleheader against the Cardinals. If they somehow can come away with this with a winning record and maybe even take 2 out of 3 from Baltimore, I think it flips the script. Now, if they get swept in the last 2 games against the Orioles and really falter against the Cardinals, I think Belly's gone. I think Horner's gone. And who knows, maybe Italian's gone as well. I think they become sellers. But for me, they're the enigma right now, is that I don't think the Cubs want to be sellers. I think they want to be buyers. But their record and what they do over the next week may force them to flip the script.
Well, and they're clearly a team that is underperformed here in the first half.
Same as Seattle, though, they can't hit.
From an expectation standpoint. I love your optimism with the Cubs. My problem with the Cubs is they have to fix the back end. I think they've blown 17 leads, in the eighth or ninth inning, and it's just been an Achilles heel for this club. And
they did
none
bring
of that,
up a
none
young
of that
kid
in the lineup's
named
going to fix
Biggie,
it.
and who hit 102 miles an hour last night, which is his major league debut. He had a spotless ninth. It wasn't a save opportunity, but let's see how he performs. Maybe he can help on that back end.
I'm going to go in my National League team that I'm looking to have a big second half is New York Mets. And it's really kind of a sleeper team because we talked about the Philadelphia Phillies out there with a 59-32 record.
I just want to interrupt you 1 second before you say that. And it's interesting that you say the Mets because when we did this segment, say, a month ago, if we would have talked about this, we would have said the Mets are going to be sellers. They had already talked about that Alonso was gone. Was he going to go to the Cubs or who was going to be a bidder for him? But they played so well over the last 30 days that it's flipped the script for them.
Yeah, and I think it's going to continue for the next 30 days. As I said, Phillies 59-32, Atlanta 51-39. The Mets are currently sitting, as we sit here today, 45-45, and that was well under 500 as we sat here a couple weeks ago. This is a two-parter for me in that I think the Mets can make a run. Number one, they've got a great schedule kind of lined up in front of them. Playing the Nats currently. Before we hit the All-Star break, they get 3 against the Rockies. Immediately coming out of the All-Star break, they get 4 games down in Miami against the Marlins. The month of August, they get 3 games against the Angels, 3 games against the Rockies, 3 games against the Mariners, 3 games against the A's, and 3 games against the Marlins. So the schedule for the Mets is absolutely fantastic. And they're going to get Senga back at some point in time here after All-Star break, and they're starting to get the hitting from Lindor. Nemo, again, another All-Star snub, probably deserved it more than Alonso did. The young kids, Vientos, Alvarez, they're starting to get
Alvarez
it.
has just been great.
I think I talked about it before. I like the way Milwaukee plays, and they play with a chip on their shoulder, and they're constantly fighting and grinding, and I feel like that Mets I have that fight and grind in them right now. And the other flip side of this is why I think the Mets can make this run is I feel that there's something wrong in Atlanta. And I don't feel like Atlanta...
It's pitching.
It's pitching. And let me address something real quick with their pitching and why I think Atlanta is likely to be a team that maybe collapses here in the second half. We all know Acuna's out. The lineup is loaded with hitters and Riley and Olsen and
losing
Ozuna
Strider
and
too really hurt.
They've got an incredible lineup. But Chris Sale has pitched 105 innings. He's 12-3 with a 2.71 ERA. This is about where Chris Sale normally hits his injury bug. He hasn't pitched over this amount of innings, I think, in the last 5 years.
So you're saying that his ship has kind of sailed this year.
I think that the Chris Sale second half, you shouldn't expect Chris Sale to go 12-3 in this second half and be able to pitch so well. Ronaldo Lopez is 7-2 for the Braves with a 1.71 ERA, one of the top ERAs in the National League. He's pitched 89.2 innings this year. His high in innings, remember he was traded from the White Sox where he was a reliever for the last 5 years. In 2018, he was a starter, pitched 188 innings. 2019, he pitched 104 innings. Since that time, he pitched 26 innings, 57 innings, 65 innings, 42 innings, 11 innings, and 13 innings. So this going, again, north of 100 innings is something that Ronaldo Lopez hasn't done in the last several years. And then they have 40-year-old Charlie Morton, which, again, it's just another thing that how long can a 40-year-old
Fried they have too.
pitch? Yeah, Fried is there. But, again, Sale, Lopez, Morton, I think that there's a collapse coming there in the second half of the season for those guys.
Don't you think, though, when we talk about the trade deadline, we've talked about, the Phillies and the Yankees. I think this Braves team, too, that they'll go out and get somebody. That they're going to go out and make a move for a pitcher or two that might be able to...
They've had to call their pitchers up.
Yep.
They've been using the Elder and Schwellwarber and these guys to try and come up and do something. I don't know what they have in that minor league program that they can sell because they've been using these guys now. Obviously, they're going to hopefully get Michael Harris back at some time. They're giving Adam Duvall. They just picked up Eddie Rosario back from the Nationals, maybe trying to give them a spark. But they're searching for something in the outfield. They're searching for those guys at bats. They've had Kalenic kind of leading off here, and they're still the Braves. The Braves find a way to win games. But I feel like the Mets,
they're a playoff team today.
I feel like the Mets can make a run, and I feel like the Mets run could be combined with a Braves setback.
It'll be interesting to see. Again, to me, the trade deadline, there's going to be so many teams that are active because of where they're at right now, the expanded playoff format, who think they're still alive and who are willing to go out and get these players. It just depends on who's going after a rental or who's going after somebody like Mason Miller, where you have team control for a little bit longer. And if the Cubs fall out of it, I think Bellinger becomes a key aspect too. I mean, is it the Braves? Is it the Astros? Is it the Yankees? Where does he ultimately get dealt to that can really help a lineup like that?
Well, and I think the White Sox, if we're going to talk trade deadline
Right.
stuff, the White Sox have a lot of pieces. Again, terrible record, going nowhere, close to probably setting a major league
They've got
record.
the strikeout leader who's going to get dealt.
Infertility.
Yeah.
But yeah, Crochet,
yep.
is a big arm that somebody's going to be looking for.
Maybe Luis Robert.
A veteran like a Tommy Pham.
Yep.
Paul DeJong, their shortstops, had a resurgence in his power. I think he's up to 16, 17
Luis
homers.
Robert, too.
Luis Robert,
yep,
Eloy
huge.
Jimenez.
Yep.
These are big bats that, when these guys are healthy, they can make a difference in somebody's
Right.
lineup. But Crochet is going to
Crochet,
be,
to me,
you talked about Miller for the A's. Crochet and Miller are the two monster arms that any team making a run would covet.
Don't you think, though, if we had to say right now the favorite to go out and get Crochet, doesn't it have to be the Dodgers?
Yes.
With the injuries they have to their starting pitchers right now?
Not only their injuries in the starting pitchers, but the performance levels, in particular Walker Buehler
Right.
and Bobby Miller, two guys that were expected to be kind of studs for that Dodger, aren't able to get guys out right now. We just saw Bobby Miller give up 8-9 earned runs to the Phillies last
now
night.
hurt again.
And Walker Buehler, essentially gone on the IL because of just
To
ineffectiveness.
me, Crochet's not enough, though. They need to go out and get 2 or 3 pitchers. He's one guy, but they need to go out and get 2 or 3
Yeah,
pitchers.
again, they're hopeful on knowing that they're going to get Ohtani back on the mound next year.
Yeah, but that doesn't help them this year,
Maybe,
right.
but that's where maybe a 1-year rental of a pitcher
Right.
steps in and is something good for them.
And they always have the kind of the pipeline or the farm system to go out and do that. I think that with the trade deadline not until the end of the month, the 31st, I think you're going to see teams make moves much earlier this year because of that. They want to be the first one to make that offer. If it's a Mason Miller, if it's a Crochet, if it's Belly. I think at the end of this weekend and as we go into the All-Star break, it's not going to surprise me to see a bunch of trades happen right around the All-Star break. As we come out of that, I think it's going to happen much earlier this year because so many teams need help.
No, we'll see. Coming again, I think there's a lot of winners on the board as we head to All-Star break. Teams that are trying to separate themselves. Hopefully, you'll take a little break during the All-Star break. Maybe study, handicap some NFL and college football while we're gone, or you could jump into the NBA Summer League being hosted here in Las Vegas. And obviously, we're going to see the superstars, young kids coming here to Vegas. Let's see a little Bronny James make an appearance. And but again, that Summer League should be fun. And we still have WNBA, which has been absolutely fantastic. A bunch of early morning games on the board this morning. Caitlin Clark and our aces continue to make a run. And let's talk about some of just a quick mention of what's going on in kind of the we'll call it the European sporting events right now. In Wimbledon, as we hit the semifinals and finals of Wimbledon in both the men's and women's side. We're in the semifinals to finals of the Euro Cup. And again here in our own backyard here in North America, where the Copa Cup, Copa America has been playing. We saw Argentina knock off Canada yesterday. But again, some exceptional games that are going on.
The crowds have been great. Just the crowds, the atmosphere. Check out the app for all the cool things, especially the live aspect of it. There's so many really good things, but the crowds have been just tremendous in the book.
Well, and again, we talked about the not being able to win baseball games. We haven't been able to win the soccer games or the tennis matches as well. So a lot of cashing going on, a lot of winners being picked in the soccer matchups as well as the tennis matchups. Although on the women's side, it's really been kind of upset city, with a lot of the top seeds being knocked out, top seeds not being played. Actually, the men's side, too, we saw number one Sinner go down.
You still have Alcaraz
and Medvedev, but the matchup has been great. The tennis has been great. We like to joke around in the hub when we get to these great games and the great service games that, this is tennis. When you watch these five setters and these guys go and play 4 hours of tennis, and you can just see the gruelingness that they're going through on the court. Wimbledon is one of those things where you get up in the morning, get the coffee or the orange juice, and just turn it on. If you're not a tennis fan, when you watch these games, you become a tennis fan. And I think that's the kind of the joke that we have, that this is tennis, is that you don't think about sitting down and watching tennis, but when you sit down and watch what these guys are going through and the game that they're playing, it really is an exceptional watch.
I think the same with soccer right now. These international events are so exciting. And as Jay kind of touched on when we first came on the segment, is that football, I think, 8 Sundays away. The 1st of August, we'll be taking applications for last man standing college and pro. And I think it's August 1st as well is the Hall of Fame game, I think, between the Bears and the Bills. So football really isn't that far away, guys. A lot of cool stuff to wager on. All the Raider games are up. Week 1's up. Win totals, conferences, divisions, to win the Super Bowl. Look for a lot more props and a lot of cool stuff on the app.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, we've worked through all that stuff to get all those numbers up. Now it's your turn to kind of look at what we put up and go ahead and handicap it. And I know I started this weekend. I sat out by the pool and I was already diving into fantasy football.
We'll have a couple of segments on that. Don't worry.
Doing some stuff, looking at some stuff. But one of my leagues is changing to a super flex league where you can use the 2 quarterbacks, put your quarterback in the flex position. So doing some extra homework on the fantasy football side of things, which again, a lot of fun going into that type of stuff.
Well, we know it's hot out, and we love it when you guys come in, and I mean we love it when you guys play on the app. It's really convenient, but if you guys come in, it's definitely cool in here. There's so many different things going on in the world of sports right now: baseball, soccer, tennis, WNBA, Olympics aren't that far away, and football isn't as well. So a lot of cool stuff on the horizon.
And before we go, if you haven't this summer, if you haven't gotten out to Sunset Station yet, especially as you're making your plans for football season in that Henderson side of town, take a look in, get into Sunset, check it out. Go pick out your seat where you want to sit in the morning, because Sunset Station is going to be the place to be this football season.
Pick out your seat. You're going to have to camp out for that seat.
152 feet of video wall over at Sunset Station with that brand new bar. Get out to Sunset, check it out. Get your campsite built for Sunset Station for football season.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting for football season. It really is a cool spot. It really brings you to the 50-yard line. So as Jason said, check it out. So, guys, he's Jason. I'm Chucky for the Sports Betting Podcast, Bookends, powered by STN Sports. We will see you guys next week, but don't forget, there is a lot of cool stuff going on in the world of sports. Please get on the app, check it out. I think you'll love it. We'll see you guys next week.